to the Living Shoreline Collaborative. The goals here are to create a corollary forum to learn and connect, to share information, transfer knowledge, and increase the pace and scale of nature-based sea level rise adaptation, design, and construction in the Bay. Everyone is welcome. No experience necessary, just a willingness to learn, share, and collaborate. And we welcome a spectrum of experiences, roles, and perspectives. So thank you all for being here today. I do want to note that this is part of the Regionally Advancing Living Shorelines project. And one of the questions that we've gotten is, how is this collaborative unique or different from other collaboratives that are active in the Bay? So we're really focused on living shorelines in the Bay and meeting both physical and biological goals within intertidal and subtidal habitats, and looking at a mix of green or ecosystem-based and green-gray approaches along the shoreline. And one of the products of this project and this effort with the team that I'll introduce on the next slide is to produce design and constructability guidance to speed up the implementation of these projects, and also work in increasing the rate, improving the process for being able to permit these projects. Another element of the project is workforce development, contractor, and community trainings. So a moment to acknowledge our leads at Coastal Conservancy, here at the San Francisco Estuary Institute, and our core team members who have been advising throughout the project and will continue to do so moving forward. So thank you to all of them for their expertise and their advice and participation. So with that, I want to pass it to Marilyn.
Thanks so much. I'm just really glad to see everyone today and be with you all today, and especially during these extremely challenging times. It's so hard to see cuts to programs for climate change, for equity, and to see cuts to those programs and staff that we all work with, that we all care about, and dismantling of climate policy and equity policy at the federal level. So I just want to say it makes it even more important to come together like this. I'm so glad to see with you all and continue our good work, the good collaborative work that's occurring at all levels, local, state, federal, in the Bay, and make sure that we continue to support each other and our federal partners. This project has a mix of state and federal funding, so that's great that there's strong state support. And along with many of you, we're going to just continue to move forward and work towards solutions and climate resilience in the Bay. So just thanks again for being here. I'm so excited about today's meeting and sort of our focused roundtable of discussions that link invasive Spartina considerations with living shorelines. And I want to pass it over to Jeremy Lowe next to start us off with a design guidance topic. Thanks.
Thanks, Marilyn. And as with all the other meetings, we've been having a discussion about one of the topics within the design guidance. And this is today's one is about the type of data that you would need to collect in preparation for before a project, so that you can do thoughtful design, and also to help form a basis for the monitoring. So what we're going to talk about is kind of the purpose and products of that data, some ideas on existing data sets, the importance of datums, examples of information from other projects that have already been collected, and some of the logistical challenges. So this is just a quick run through. I've got 15 minutes or so. Next slide, please. Because what we really want to hear is from you at the meeting and also afterwards, is that what lessons have you learned that you would like to pass on? And particularly, do you have examples of good practice in data collection that you can share? Both of those are important to add to the guidance to allow us to have a really good full document. Next slide, please. So what are we talking about in terms of the purpose of the data collection? It's important before we collect the data to understand what we're going to use it for. And primarily, this is to form the design of the living shoreline approaches. And as you know, there's many different types of shoreline approaches we have. We have nearshore reefs, eelgrass plantings, beaches, woody debris, all sorts of different types of approaches. And each of them has supports different types of species, and each of them has specific environmental conditions to consider, and many of them being in subtidal or intertidal areas, the depth of water and the period of inundation is important. So the elevation of the land is important. The tides are important. Also, the substrate that they are built on provides is an important factor in the design, as well as the water, the quality of the water column as well, the salinity, the dissolved oxygen, and so on. So all of those aspects are really important related to the different approaches, not only in design, but also as a basis for understanding how the approach has occurred, made a difference after it's constructed. Next slide, please. And also, of course, as we know in the Bay, all of these different factors vary around the Bay. And so having site-specific information is really important. The bathymetry, not just for the habitat, not just for the design of the approach, but also for how you construct it. How would you access the area? The tides, the influence of fresh water in the estuary varies around the Bay, and also the effect of winds and waves affected by the fetch and the distance, the fetch and the direction of the winds has an impact on what waves we have, as well as the existing species and habitats, the space that we have to actually do the project, and also the existing uses and ownership of those areas. So there's a lot of information before the design to consider, and we're thinking about how we can collect that data in an efficient and practical manner. Next slide, please. So when thinking about what you want to collect, also you want to think about what you want to have at the end of this. And as part of this guidance, we would like to kind of give examples of the types of products that are useful to the designers, to the engineers, but also to planners, and also to as communication products we can inform and engage the public with and other people. So there's a number of different things we can do. For example, providing maps which actually bring together different types of information. And the most obvious one in this case is the combination of bathymetry and topography to provide a complete surface of what the shape of these areas are, what the elevations are, because many of the approaches expand between the subtidal, intertidal, and the upland areas. And also, how do we communicate that information? As we have maps so that we can provide those visually, but a lot of the work is done with through GIS or through CAD using digital elevation models or DEMs, which provide a grid of points of elevation to a known datum, which can then be manipulated to provide volumes and areas, and helps provide that design guidance on what we're trying to construct. Also, just making sure we have the right file formats, depending upon whether it's in a geographical information system or a computer-aided design system, a CAD or a GIS. It's important to know where the work is going to go to, where the information is going to be manipulated. And also just an imagery from many of these types of surveys. There is an ability to capture images to understand more about what those features are, which can then be further analyzed, say for the shoreline, for the different types of elements that we have. And we need to understand what we're going to produce these maps and figures for, who our audience is, and what we need to communicate. Next slide, please. So in existing data sets, the Bay is very lucky. Every time we have a call with somebody outside the Bay, they are always very, very thankful for the type of information we have collected as a region and for the amount of work that's been done to provide a good picture of what's available in the area. So we have a large number of data sets of bathymetry and topography. Bathymetry is the below water surfaces. Topography is the above water. We have regional predictions of tides and waves and extreme water levels all around the Bay. And we have a Baylands habitat map, which has just been recently completed. We have a large number of these different data sets. And on the right, I've just put the bathymetry data set that we have, which gives you a first idea about what the water depths are in a particular site, in this case, Heron's Head. We also have some very specific data sets. The subtidal goals produced habitat distribution maps and stressor maps of activities. A lot of information that it can be used before the design really progresses beyond it starts to develop as a concept, so that we can be well informed, that we have the right approaches, and we understand the our environmental setting correctly. Next slide, please. But at some point, we need to also kind of measure at the local level, and we need at the site itself. We need to understand the more detail about understanding about the setting that we have. And one of the first things we should do in any type of surveys is to make sure we understand where we are on the Earth in terms of vertical and horizontal control, where we are in terms of the datums of the vertical datums, which are obviously which are usually referred to as NAVD, or North American Vertical Datum, and also as a horizontal datum, where we are in location-wise, or the North American datum, and making sure that when we're doing a project and we're sharing data, we understand what those controls are. You're either using existing benchmarks or that may be already in place or accessible, or providing new control. Making sure we understand the tidal datums. How does the water, how's the tide at that particular location tie in with the local ground surface? And so either collecting new tidal information, or calibrating a short, maybe a several week measure of the tides, and relating that to a more fixed tidal data, maybe the San Francisco gauge. And then establishing survey points which are accessible and usable for the actual project, not just for the construction, but also for longer for the monitoring. Next slide, please. So it's important to have a good control. It's also important then to understand how we can collect this information. Bathymetry is often collected by single beam or multi-beam sonar, depending upon the depths and the types of resolution that people are interested in. There's a lot of SOPs which provide information how to do this kind of work, and there are a lot of hydrographic companies that can do this work with licensed surveyors. So there's an important element here of making sure we have the right people doing the right jobs with the right equipment. Topographically, the survey, there's a number of different ways we can do that. Many of them are now aerial based, either from aircraft or from drones, using LiDAR or light detection and ranging equipment. It's quite common to use. It provides good quality, and provides some penetration of vegetation. There's also a form of photogrammetry called structure from motion, which is used from drones, which can also provide an elevation map, but it's maybe of lower quality, but it can also penetrate vegetation. And then all of these require some sort of ground truthing, and often by topographic survey, firstly to making sure we have some quality assurance of the surveys, but also there's some features that can only be really surveyed by from the ground, and often that is using some sort of GPS system. And you'll often hear reference to real-time kinematic GPS. I won't go into what that is, but it is as part of the guidance, we will be explaining what these different types of methods are. Next slide, please. So what we can do then is produce these combined topo-bathy maps, or topographic and bathymetry on the same map, which is an important tool for all of us working in these intertidal areas, where in past it's sometimes been difficult to stitch these together. But when we're doing these merging of these different types of survey information, we need to look particularly where these two surfaces overlap, because we need to make sure that they match together, even though we're using different methodologies. And occasionally there are gaps in the area of coverage, and we've got to think about how to fill those gaps, some sort of interpolation. And then we need to make sure that we can describe to people what those what those maps are showing in terms of the elevations. It's where contouring is one of the important ways of doing that, and the color shading that we have in this image on the right, which is from Giant Marsh. The colored areas, the green to the browny colors, are all the bathymetric survey. So this was done from a boat. For all the areas on the gray areas with the contour lines are done from the drone surveys. So matching those together provides us a complete picture of this surface. So that's very important for understanding volumes, understanding depths at which waves are being affected, understanding the depths at which different approaches the elements are being built. Next slide, please. But there were even richer information can be taken from the imagery. And here, this is the kind of on the left-hand side is a subsurface image of the Red Rocks area around Point Monolte. And it shows reef elements, it shows eelgrass, it shows pilings, and a lot of structure in there, which would normally be missed in a simple contour map. And so from getting it gives us a very good understanding of the type of area that we're working in, the substrate, and this can be analyzed even further